It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. Congressman Rick Crawford joins us again. Rick, it's always great to have you on, sir.
Hey, man, no Johnny Cash today?
Well, that was actually a Johnny Cash song. It just has a really long intro, but that's "I'll Be Home for Christmas" by Johnny Cash. But it took forever to get there.
All right.
I'm sorry to disappoint.
It's okay.
Let's talk a little bit about the Farm Bill. What are your thoughts on the Farm Bill? I know it's we got progress there, right?
We did, and I mean, there were some naysayers, that talked about, well, it's just more of the same. That's just not true. We didn't get everything we wanted on the nutrition title, but here's the upshot here that I think people need to understand. We still have control in the administration. So while we didn't achieve the statutory accomplishments we wanted to with regard to these work requirements, the Secretary has the authority to implement those anyway. And so he'll implement everything we were asking for legislatively. So then the argument is, well, then the next administration can come in and undo it. Yes, that's true, but not without the pay-go requirement. And so when you see when they realize the benefits and savings that this brings to the federal budget, and then you've got the obstacle of pay-go to be able to compensate for that, this is a big win. This is big deficit reduction. And so I think people need to recognize that while we didn't accomplish the statutory changes that we still have,
which were what? Basically limits on the food stamps, because the food stamps
right,
is like 80% of the bill, right?
Right. And so basically what we were trying to do was to codify reprogramming those dollars toward career and technical education. So basically requiring that if you're going to receive these benefits, if you're between the ages of 18 and 59, that you've got to be either working 20 hours a week or in an approved and funded CTE program, then that not only is that good for us from the standpoint of finite resources in the form of taxpayer dollars, but it's also good in helping improve people's personal economy and getting them an on-ramp, to success. And so I think this should be viewed as a win, even though we didn't accomplish that statutorily. The authority still exists for the Secretary to administer those programs, and he will begin to promulgate rules almost immediately to reflect what we were trying to accomplish in the House version.
Well, and I think that's good.
As said, I think it's a win for us. And then as far as on the ag side, mostly the continuation of the previous policy. So continuity is always good. I mean, you can't do anything with certainty, but you can do some things with predictability. And when you've got Mother Nature as your business partner, you need all the predictability you can get. And so if you can help sort of predict these programs and maintain continuity, that is a significant accomplishment as well.
Well, and you got to know that the farmers out there were watching this carefully, just because there is a little uncertainty out there with the tariffs and everything that's been going on internationally with China, and I think farmers are like, come on, we don't need any delay here. We don't need another thing to worry about. But what are your thoughts on the new developments with the 90-day halt to increases in tariffs with China?
I'm encouraged. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I understand. Farmers, their patriotism is probably. They can only stand so much, when it starts to affect their bottom line. And so I applaud our farmers for, their understanding of what was trying to be accomplished here. There's some good news in that, we just got a deal on some soybeans. They're going to go out of the port in Seattle, the Northwest. And so I had somebody on Twitter, so how does that benefit Arkansas farmers? Well, I mean, clearly they don't understand how grain markets work. Grain is fungible commodity on the global market, in the global marketplace. So moving grain is good for everybody that grows grain. So while they're not necessarily buying Arkansas soybeans, they're buying and helping to relieve the pressure of backstocks that are depressing prices. So that's how it benefits Arkansas farmers. So I just wish people, when they comment on Twitter, they would comment with some basic understanding before they jump out there and say crazy things like that. But the reality is I'm less concerned about what port the beans move from and more concerned about the fact that they're moving. And what that does is provide some support. And you can look and see what the markets have done. I think we're at somewhere around 920 for March beans right now. Maybe give or take 5 or 10 cents. That's a significant upturn. We don't know what the future holds, but I'm seeing more and more economic activity in China that shows that they are in a very precarious position, that they're having an inflation problem, they're declining growth, their retail sector is not enough activity to offset it. As I've said all along, their economy is not in a position to sustain these tariffs, and we're seeing the evidence of that now. Yes, it was a burden for us, and it continues to be, and I think what we're seeing now is the beginning of the end of this tariff posture that's going to open those markets back up. In the interim, what we've seen is U.S. farmers looking for opportunities to expand market access outside of the Chinese market. That's a big market to try and overcome and offset. But we're seeing some positive trends so that we don't have to have all our eggs in one basket. Yes, that's a big part of our export picture. But to the farmers' credit, and exporters, they're finding some inroads into other countries to improve our market picture without necessarily having to rely exclusively on China.
I mean, I'm encouraged as well. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. A lot of people, congressmen, thought that President Trump's approach here, because it really hasn't been done very often, was going to be disastrous. They say things like, well, trade is just too hard and everything else. But it appears, like you just said, China needs access to our market, and their economy just couldn't handle this. I mean, again, we're cautiously optimistic. Everything could be done away with, I guess. They arrested that CFO from Huawei, which I thought was strange. There's a lot of things that could happen to upset the negotiations. But so far, it appears that President Trump's strategy is working.
Well, and that's really what's making people mad. The fact that, I mean, here's a guy who is not, subscribing to, the established dogma of how trade deals work. He's results oriented, and if he has to shake things up to do it. Look, I'm not trying to be a Donald Trump apologist, but I'm just saying when you call out a win for a win, okay? So I think we're on the brink of winning here with regard to how China conducts itself in the marketplace, not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world. Let's get real about what China's plans are. China's plans are to supplant the United States as the preeminent economy in the world. Ultimately, they would like to supplant the U.S. dollar as the standard reserve currency for global transactions. They would like for their currency to rise to that level, and they know, and they're caught. They can't continue to operate the way they are and expect to achieve those goals. And so, even in their own interest, they had to make some adjustments, because if they're to be held up to the standards that they think they should be held up to, it starts by playing by the rules. And they have not played by the rules for decades. They continue to flout the WTO rules. They continue to do their own thing, lie, cheat, steal, forced technology transfers, intellectual property theft, counterfeiting products. You name it, they do it. And that is not how an economic superpower operates. And if they expect to be treated like an economic superpower, they're going to have to change their ways. And that's all that President Trump is saying and doing to back that up. And so what that does is benefit U.S. producers. And I'm not talking about just ag producers. I'm talking about anybody that is, in today's economy, you're a global player, whether you want to be or not. If you're producing a product or good for sale somewhere, you might as well understand that you are in the global marketplace, because you're either exporting your product or you're competing with products that are being brought into our market. In either case, you are participating in a competitive global marketplace. And for that to work and be fair, you've got to have the other participants playing by the rules. And that's all I think that Donald Trump was trying to establish, is that, by gosh, y'all are going to play by the rules, and we're going to see to it that you do.
We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford a little bit on trade here. Now, Congressman Rick Crawford, he is on the House Intelligence Committee, which is, so he is privy to a lot of information. I know he can't share with us. But yesterday, Congressman, there was an interesting development, I thought. An oversight panel on the Clinton Foundation met yesterday, a subcommittee, and they talked to two gentlemen who are financial investigators who have submitted a probable cause claim to the IRS about massive problems with the Clinton Foundation. His name is John Moynihan and Larry Doyle. Now, Mark Meadows was pretty upset that they wouldn't turn over all of their documents because they're under the impression that they won't qualify for a reward with the IRS if the IRS accepts their claim. But some stark admissions, Congressman Crawford. We found out that they submitted to the IRS evidence of an ongoing FBI investigation out of Little Rock into the Clinton Foundation. A 747, which a lot of people said was some conspiracy. They referenced that in their testimony. A 747 landing in Little Rock, being loaded with documents and flown back. Pretty explosive stuff. I click off after the end of the testimony, and what do I see? I see the the Wall Street Journal saying President Trump's inauguration is now being investigated, and I just thought, wow, we can't win for losing here. What's your reaction to all that's been going on?
Well, this is a classic redirect. The fact of the matter is the Clintons have been misbehaving for years, and I think, finally people are coming to the realization that something has to be done about it. But do you think that the media are going to say anything about it? No. They're going to do everything they can to insulate the Clintons from any kind of, public opinion adjudication, if you will. So here's the thing. Like I said, it's been going on for years, and the problem with the media is that they have been so fully invested in first, with the Clintons, then the Obamas, and, so on, that they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to admit that they made a mistake. And so rather than just say, look, we messed up. We gave them too much credit for being people of character. We gave them too much credit for being, forthright and above board. No, because they've been so fully invested in it that they can't admit or won't admit that they were wrong. And look, I'm going to tell you, if they would just come clean and say, look, yep, we blew that call, but now we've got to start covering it honestly, maybe we'd get some coverage on this from the mainstream media. But it's not happening. And so, you're not going to see, the average Joe on the street doesn't have a clue that Secretary Clinton was running a pay-to-play scheme as Secretary of State. But the evidence suggests that she was. And the Clinton Foundation, the revenue that they generated during her years as Secretary of State indicate that she was running that kind of a game. And then you can see now how their donations have tailed off just, more than just considerably, almost, to nothing by comparison. And so these people have information that they're trying to get out. They're being threatened to some degree. So it's a classic cover-up, and there are still some Clinton acolytes within the federal government that are, doing everything they can to also derail, redirect, whatever they can do to try and take attention away from this. But this is going on.
Yeah, and not to mention, there's a lot of people that have a lot to lose here. It was some of the testimony from these financial investigators. They basically said, look, they were not operating under the rules of a nonprofit the way you're supposed to, which would mean if the IRS does actually investigate this, they're going to find that the people who have given the Clintons millions and millions of dollars, they got to write that off as a tax-deductible donation. And all of a sudden now, all of their donors are going to owe money to the IRS. So there's it's a lot bigger than just the Clintons.
Well, it is. And so anytime, you involve the IRS, they can delve into, cracks and crevices that you would rather keep covered up, I'm sure, and they could do it with a microscope and make it very uncomfortable for people. And so there's going to be a whole lot of folks that are kind of going, we had no idea. But at some point in time, people are going to be held to account. And when they're held to account, that's when you're going to start hearing them complain about, how this foundation was run.
Mm-hmm.
And when you might start to see a little bit more coverage of it, when you reach a critical mass of big donors asking the question, how come we were told one thing and it turns out it's another, and now we're going to have to we've got a tax liability that we didn't anticipate, and some fairly significant.
One last question. I know we got to go. James Comey testimony behind closed doors that was released, and we found out, I guess, that former director of the FBI didn't remember a whole lot of what happened when he was the director.
Mm-hmm. Well, you and I go back a long way on this issue, and we talked about this back in when he came out and made the announcement about the Hillary campaign. He made the statement that in this environment, no prosecutor would bring charges against Hillary. Well, I told you then I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I've done that, and I can see now that, I reserved judgment at that point in time. That's been over 2 years ago, I guess now. I reserved judgment, and since I've been on the Intelligence Committee, I've seen him for what he really is. And he has got a serious problem. And I don't know what his game is, but I can tell you what it's not. It's not about the truth. This guy has lied. He's lied to us in front of our committee. He's lied to the American people, and he's continuing to do it. This is not the Boy Scout that he purported to be, and he's got some serious problems. I don't know what his long game is, but I can tell you right now he is completely compromised and conflicted, and I have no regard for him.
Wow. That is, you heard it there, folks, from Congressman Rick Crawford. Congressman, appreciate you coming on. Merry Christmas to you, sir, and your family.
Same to you. Merry Christmas.
All righty. Rick Crawford, everybody.